Now, for more on this story, we're joined by Rajiv Biswas. He's the Executive Director and Asia Pacific Chief Economist at IHS Markit. Thanks so much for speaking to us here on TRT World. Now, how do you explain what's happening to the markets, especially the Dow's huge loss?
We are seeing a lot of concerns in global financial markets about weak economic data in some of the major economies. And I think markets were particularly concerned yesterday by the weakness of some of the Chinese economic data for industrial production, and also because Europe's most important manufacturing economy, Germany, also had negative GDP growth in the second quarter. So both of these negative developments in some of the biggest economies in the world, I think, have made investors more worried about a weakening global economic outlook. And what we are seeing in manufacturing globally is quite a lot of evidence of weakness, particularly in the Eurozone, but also in many Asian countries. Manufacturing is showing considerable weakness in export orders, and the US-China trade war has contributed to that development.
And Rajiv, I want to ask you, you say, investors are worried, and but tell us, at this stage, how worried should everyday people be?
I think the global economy is still expanding. We still expect positive growth this year and next year. And in particular, the US economy is still quite solid, particularly in the services sector. And we are seeing a strong labor market in the US, continued jobs growth. And so in general, consumer spending is strong, and that's very crucial for the US economy. So I think we need to look at what's happening with the consumer in the US, and the US consumer is still pretty much in good shape. And then, of course, China, the world's second biggest economy, is growing at about 6%. So these are two important pillars signaling that global growth is still positive. So although manufacturing is weaker in the first half of this year, the overall growth momentum in the US, in China, and also many other Asian developing countries such as India, Indonesia, are still growing relatively well. So definitely there's a moderation in momentum, and certainly there's a lot of concern about what's happening in global manufacturing. But the broader global economy is still growing.
And that's good to know. And Rajiv, a lot of people who remember the 2008 recession, I mean, it's not that long ago, maybe thinking, how can we trust what's happening at the moment? Because a lot of the signs then were missed. For example, Lehman Brothers still had its AAA rating during that time. So how can we be confident now?
I think the financial system in the US and in Europe were rebuilt after the global financial crisis. There's a lot more regulatory oversight and stronger capital in the financial system. However, I think definitely when we look at the near-term outlook or medium-term outlook, there's still a lot of concern about risks around China. There's still a lot of imbalances in the Chinese economy. So although we do expect China to be growing at about 6% this year and even next year, certainly if we worry about risks, then China would be one of the economies that we should be monitoring very carefully. But for now, we still see China growing at a pretty solid pace and helping to support global growth.
Rajiv, great to get your perspective. Thank you very much for your time. Rajiv Biswas speaking to us there.